Hey, welcome back to the studio. Hybrid today. So you, Jamie, are with me,
Yeah.
and we have Megan dialing in from the interwebs. So quick hellos. I'm Ian, editor-in-chief of Internet Retailing. Who are you, Jamie?
I'm Jamie Merrick and I work at Salesforce.
But more importantly, Megan, welcome from the internet. Tell everyone who you are.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks, Jamie. My name is Megan Maley, and I am the GM for the Benelux and UK and Ireland region for Zalando. I'm very excited to join you
Wow.
today.
Now,
Mm.
well, fantastic. I mean, last time we saw each other in real life, Megan, was at Shoptalk, where you wowed everybody with an overview of Zalando. And I think I left and there was still a queue, 20 people long, waiting to talk to you. So this is the queue-free access all areas follow-up. Now, you know I'm a big fan of Zalando, and we've followed them as a digital phenomenon for many, many years. Um, but maybe for anybody who's either out of the core age group or maybe isn't as familiar,
Mhm.
just kick us off by giving us a thumbnail of Zalando overall and then how it's translated into the UK.
Great. Yes, thank you. And that was indeed a great experience. I really enjoyed being interviewed by you at Shop Talk. Yeah, let me tell a bit about Zalando for those who are maybe not as familiar with us. Zalando is really the leading European online platform for fashion and lifestyle. And really, what we do is we connect brands and retailers to the platform where they can then sell their fashion and beauty products to 49 million active customers across Europe. And that's in 25 different countries. And then likewise, we connect those 49 million customers to a huge, a plethora of brands. We have 5,800 brands currently, and that translates into about 1.5 million items on site. And so it really connects, this incredible assortment to customers who love fashion and beauty. And I think one of the other big things that we focus on is also, of course, sustainability. We have a very large range of more sustainable products. I think it's about 150,000 items, and that's growing. And so we really try to also connect our customers with products that match their values and the choices that they want to make around shopping fashion. It's really an incredible platform. We really focus on both obviously the assortment and offering, but also inspiration and advice on fashion and beauty and lifestyle. So that's a little bit
Wow.
about us.
Now,
Yes.
I'm boggling at some of those
Mm.
numbers. 49 million customers,
Active customers.
active customers, good
Mhm.
Correct.
point.
Yeah.
5,800 brands, extraordinary. But if I step back 30 paces, um, what category do I put you in? Because some of the things you say sound like a marketplace, some sound like a retailer. You have your own products, partner products. Um, how would I describe this 25 country entity? What is it?
Yes, I think the best kind of description word would obviously be to be a platform. So we are a platform where the brands have the opportunity to obviously bring their products together, and it is a partnership, I would say. So it's definitely not a platform where brands come on and they are on their own. The partnership is really around how we accompany the brands and the retailers in order to be successful and to obviously scale their businesses into new markets as well. One of the big benefits that we offer to partners with who join us through the partner program is that they are obviously able to expand their offering across 25 different markets. And some of these are markets which probably would be challenging to organically enter, just with your own e-commerce or your own direct-to-consumer business. And so what we do is we really support them on obviously accessing these customers, but then also with the marketing services that we have, Zalando Fulfillment Services, helping them to have different tools to better bring new customers to their brand, to get their brand more top of mind knowledge within the market, and also to help them logistically to be able to take these markets on, because that's also obviously a challenge that many brands face. So I think it's a platform that offers a high level of partnership and helps really our partners to have an easy and cost-effective way to gain access to new customers and to scale their businesses.
So this is a big deal at the moment. We saw in our Global 1000, the global elite, that 616 of the 1,000 are brands saying direct. And of course, these brands are looking at marketplaces, platforms, partnerships, franchising, wholesale. They're trying to do everything and anything in order to expand their business. So when we look at the Zalando platform, um, if I look at it from the brand perspective, how is my experience different and better with you than, for example, ringing up another marketplace, getting my customer success director, being told I'm loved, I can use their fulfillment? Um, these are similar words. Where's the secret sauce, the sprinkles that I wouldn't know until I start working with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are a lot of options for brands today to work with different platforms or with marketplaces. I think maybe first taking a step back and why would they want to work with one to begin with, and then maybe why was
Mhm.
Zalando? Coming from a brand, obviously, knowing that brands today, they really are focusing on the direct to consumer offense that most of brands are looking at. I think that the pandemic also accelerated that in the case of a lot of brands where potentially they didn't have a strong direct to consumer digital business in the past, and that maybe accelerated significantly during COVID. At the same time, there's I think, an acknowledgement amongst brands that this is also, it's an expensive thing to do as well. You have to pay for the traffic. You have to find ways to build your own direct to consumer ecosystem, and that it isn't just because you have a website doesn't mean people are going to automatically go there. And obviously, what a platform offers is this high quality traffic of customers that are looking for a specific thing, in this case, fashion and beauty. And this brings a high level of traffic that then you can benefit from. And if we kind of extrapolate this, back in the 80s and 90s, when I was first starting out in retail, there was the big question of, do you have both a store on the high street and also in the mall? Because the mall was where the traffic was, and the high street, you had to try to bring the traffic to you. And I think what we see now is, you wouldn't imagine now to have a store on a high street and not be in a mall. And likewise, you wouldn't imagine to have a direct to consumer ecosystem that is potentially stores and online, but then not also be where the traffic is and where the customer is and be in their path. And so that's why being on a platform today is an important place for brands to be. And I think there's a clear acknowledgement that this is the case. I think from there, it's which one. And obviously, not all platforms are created equal. I think both in terms of geography, some have strengths in certain geographies and others. Obviously, there's also categories. And what Zalando, I think what we're very clear that we're extremely strong in is it's Europe, 25 countries across all of Europe, and it's fashion and beauty and lifestyle. And so being very, very focused on these key categories allows us to be extremely authentic in these areas. And because this is the only areas that we focus in versus maybe some multi-category platforms, there's acknowledgement that, that we have high areas of expertise and authenticity. I think what we then do is not just focus on, as I mentioned, the ways we accompany partners on the platform, but also how we inspire customers around fashion, because this is quite unique. And I think this is what's unique about Zalando. We are very focused on fashion inspiration. I think I mentioned when we talked at Shoptalk, we have the Style Creator program where we have 400 influencers across Europe that are extremely influential people within style and fashion. And what they do is basically they're able to shop our collections on a seasonal basis, create hundreds, thousands of looks that then inspire our customers with people that they are aspiring to be like, with fashion. And there are many, many different ways that we are doing this. This is just one of them, but this creates, I think, this this high level of authenticity in fashion that you don't find elsewhere.
Yes, I love that. I love the expertise, the authenticity, and the involvement of the human, even as you're leveraging that with technology.
Mm.
Jamie, have you been invited to be one of the influencers?
I don't remember seeing the invite, but listen, I'll double check my inbox
Yes,
again.
check the
Check your
spam.
spam filter, indeed.
Thank you, Megan. That feels reassuring.
But Megan, I know that we're not exactly the center of the target for your customers. So let's maybe just temporarily and parochially focus on the UK. And just tell us how the Zalando pan-European formula has either been amended, extended, changed, influenced by the UK. So how do you fit in, and how is that a different flavour from the other 24 countries, if at all?
Sure, I can definitely talk a little bit about the UK and then maybe even expand upon it with some of the other markets that I look after because, I have a very, I would say, diverse cluster of countries. So Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, UK, and Ireland. Some similarities, I would say not a lot.
Yeah, why those? Why those? It sounds like the weirdest commute involving ferries across the North Sea and then back by train.
Indeed, there's definitely some different logistic challenges depending on which markets I'm looking at. I would say I'm trying to think back at how this was all part of a Northern European cluster at one point. The Nordics were part of that at one time as well. Now they are their own entity. Um, yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons. Also, potentially my expertise. I lived also in the Netherlands for some years. I was working in France for a number of years. We can talk about a bit about that later. But and then also based in the UK and Ireland for probably the last 10 years. So maybe my expertise on these particular markets was part of shaping this as well. But let's see, let's go back to the UK. So, UK market, obviously, it's a very challenging and highly contested market for e-commerce. And Zalando, I think one of our strengths within this market is definitely the offering of international brands. I think that's everything from brands all across Europe. All of the big international players have a very very large and I think high level assortment as well. When we think of those kind of top 20 international brands, and I think that's really what we offer here in the market, where there's quite a focus on either mono-branded e-commerce retailers or multi-branded, but potentially with more focus on UK brands. One other thing that obviously is really interesting here in the UK, especially for UK brands, is being able to leverage Zalando to expand into Europe. And so we work with, I would say, a number of UK brands who potentially don't have a large footprint in terms of a stores or even e-commerce direct to consumer in mainland Europe. And so what Zalando allows them to do is to really have a better and kind of strengthen their presence in mainland Europe, especially in key markets like Germany, France, potentially in the Nordics as well. And so it tends to be us, we as Zalando in the UK, I think what we offer customers is this very, interesting and expansive assortment that we then also bring to life, as I mentioned, through this kind of high level of fashion authenticity, partnering with style creators. We work with the British Fashion Council as well. And then, of course, working with the UK brands. And that's something that I focus on a lot here in the UK specifically. If I think about then, some of the other markets, they all have their own specificities, maybe a bit more mature also for Zalando. So if I look at the Netherlands and Belgium, both countries where we've been present for more than 10 years, we're celebrating 10 years in Belgium this year. And here it's a little bit more, I would say, about deepening relationships with the customers. We have a very large customer base in these markets, and really focusing on unlocking new propositions as well, whether that be beauty, our loyalty program, etc.
So, I mean, thinking about the customers across those different territories, and it does sound a mighty complex job, by the way. So, congratulations for doing what you do. Um, but what are the key differences that you could really say about the needs of those customers that you have to address in a different way based off the single platform and brand that you have?
Yes, localization is one of the biggest focuses, I would say, of my team. So first of all, I have teams that sit across each of these markets that are fully dedicated to each market. That's really important, I would say, in terms of obviously the linguistic component, but also understanding things such as pricing. We're using different currencies in various markets. We're working with different logistics partners in every market. So it's extremely important, first of all, to understand what is the value proposition that is going to be right for each market. That's everything from above the line marketing all the way through to last mile delivery, payment methods. And so we're very focused with each of these teams on how we create this, beginning to end, value proposition by market. And how we determine that is obviously through data. and understanding the customers through the data and the analytics that we have based on our existing customers. Obviously, data in new markets, for example, that we get that we can, look at, buy, purchase, to understand what are the habits of these customers in these markets, but to understand exactly what kinds of differences that we can see, and then how we know our customers better to serve them. And I would say, if I want to kind of take a couple of examples, maybe if we look at Ireland, so this is a much newer market for Zalando. We opened in 2018. And it's a market where we are still really trying to build our top of mind awareness so that customers understand who is Zalando, what is this brand, what do we stand for, who are we? So we're still really building brand recognition, and then really trying to share what is our offering, who are we, who are the brands that we offer, what is the convenience proposition, etc. And that's a very, very different, I would say, activity than what I would do in Belgium, where it's a very mature market. Everyone knows who is Zalando, so it's not trying to say who is Zalando, but it's more trying to then focus on those very deep customer relationships, and understanding which customers, for example, are interested in designer versus which customers are interested in sport, and trying to have this extremely targeted sort of way to work with our customers. So depending on the maturity of the market, their knowledge of our brand, obviously a very different approach, different marketing campaigns, and different kind of entire go-to-market proposition. So that's why I think it's extremely important to have these teams that truly know and serve the customers.
So just as a quick follow-on to that, when you come in and start your day, well, it's Monday today, isn't it? I think it's a bit lost track of time. But do you kind of go, well, the UK's easy. I don't have to worry about the UK because that's blah blah blah, or Belgium's really difficult, or whatever it may be. Is it as simple as that, or is it just the complexities in a mature market versus an emerging market like Ireland, for example?
Or by customer segment?
By segment, is it just different, as it were, rather than one's easier than the other?
Yes, I think indeed it's. I think we could only say different. It would be the answer. I think in general, as I think we can acknowledge that the economy in general is not easy at the moment. So I think there are probably a few people who go into work on a Monday and think, "Wow, this is easy." But that's the challenge. Is obviously exciting. Obviously, we had a strong phase of strong growth over the last couple of years. That was based on, I think, some markets that were new and becoming more mature, and then also obviously the tailwinds from the pandemic. And as you probably know from speaking with other guests, this is a more challenging time in general for e-commerce and for commerce in general. So I think on a Monday, you're thinking about you're looking at the numbers, thinking, how are we doing? Going in and then trying to look at what is the data telling me, what are our customers telling us, and how can we continue to do better? And each market has a different version of what better is, but that's what our teams are really focused on.
Great. Now, our listener gets annoyed when I do a segue without depressing the clutch, but it seems as if we're at a point where um, you've mentioned market and economic challenges. Absolutely. You touched earlier on sustainability, so I'd like to bring that back again, and also the spectre of changes to what we used to laud as the fast fashion sector. So it does seem to me as if you've got general economic malaise and concern, maybe a maturing customer that's thinking, I don't want fast fashion anymore. Discuss, I don't have the facts on that. And also, there's a customer that's saying, I would like to, I can't consume my way to sustainability. I need a more sustainable approach baked in. So, if you take all of these three things together, could you maybe just pick the two of them out, which are, let's talk about sustainability and your work on that, which is really exciting. But also, then, does that talk to all segments of your customer base, or are there distinctive groups that are going off in the sustainability direction or not? World's worst question, feel free to.
Answer as you wish.
That is a low watermark in terms of rubbish questions.
It was lucky we've only got a listener, isn't it?
Exactly. Sorry, Megan. Sustainability,
Yes.
headwinds.
Yeah. Thanks. I'll work my way through this one, but thanks, Ian. Yeah, I mean, I think sustainability is clearly of extreme importance, and I think we can all agree that probably climate change is the most important, I would say, global topic of our time. I don't think anyone lives anywhere where this is not something that we will be encountering and feeling the challenges of. And fashion is a contributor of that. And I think that's where we, being the starting point for fashion or the leading platform for fashion and lifestyle here in Europe, we have a very, very clear job to do in terms of leading the industry and really driving and leading on sustainability. So what are we doing? I think the good news is that I think Zalando, I've been at Zalando for a bit over a year now. However, Zalando has been focused on sustainability for much longer than that. So we already have some pretty clear, I would say some great results so far. Basically, I think it was 2017, we basically put a stake in the ground as a company saying that we wanted to have this do more strategy, which was all about really diminishing the carbon footprint. Since that has happened in 2017, we've already reduced the carbon footprint of the company by over 61%. And that's just the beginning, because obviously we have 40% more to go. But I think we can see that by putting a clear stake in the ground, this is the only way that we can make progress. We have to make very bold goals in order to eventually achieve those. We also made some very clear, I think, put some pretty clear goals around sustainability in terms of our assortment, because what we see is that our customers want to shop more sustainably, but they need to be able to do that by, first of all, having an assortment they can shop from, and then also being able to know what is sustainable or what is more sustainable and what isn't. And so one of the biggest things that we've been very focusing on is, first of all, providing a more sustainable assortment. So we doubled our more sustainable product assortment from, I think, 80,000 to more than 140,000 SKUs in just 1 year. And what that is translated to is that we've gone from 16% of our GMV, our gross merchandise value, being more sustainable products to almost 22% in just 1 year's time.
Wow.
So the more that we put the assortment there for the customers, the more they want to buy it. But likewise, what we really try to do is make it easy for them to shop. And so on site, what you'll see, both on the website as well as the app, all of the more sustainable products are clearly flagged, but then you can also filter for specific areas of sustainability. So whether that's clean water preservation, if it's being vegan, if it's around workers' rights, you can really filter for the values that are most important for you and make sure that you find an assortment that fits that. So I think that's first of all, one way that we focus on making those choices easier for the customers. Another way that I would say we've really focused on trying to do that is through adding an element of circularity. And what we see, you asked the question, Ian, around does this apply to all customers? And what we see is actually pretty uniformly across our customer base, people are interested in sustainability. It's not just the very young, and that when people have the option, they can have the clear option, they go for it. But one thing that we've definitely seen, especially amongst the younger customers, is this very strong interest in circularity. You've obviously seen the rise of sort of the secondhand or pre-loved, I think, within various areas of the fashion industry. And what Zalando has now created since 2019 is we have our own point of view on circularity, which is our pre-owned category. This is really, what's really, I think, unique about this is in general, when customers want to buy pre-owned product, it's either through physical retail, through maybe the charity shop network, or through some C2C, platforms where you're basically buying and trading and selling consumer to consumer. But there are very few places, at least I don't really know of any, where you can buy both secondhand fashion as well as new fashion in the same place, making those orders in the same. So I can be ordering some new fashion that I might need for my daughter for back to school, and then also buying potentially some secondhand items for myself. And all of that on one transaction within one website using one payment method. And this is really, I think, quite unique. Also, in terms of the way that you trade in and the sustainability aspect there, it's a very simple and I think straightforward action. So I can just basically put product that I no longer want in a box, send it to Zalando. They will then say how much they believe they can sell it for, and then basically will sell it, and then I can either receive, I can then use that what it's sold for to buy fashion again on Zalando, or I can donate that to charities in the sustainability area. And so I think this is a very, very unique proposition around circularity that doesn't exist elsewhere.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
But I'm torn. I'm
Yes.
torn as a customer. I'm thinking, yeah, great, do it.
Yeah.
Your problem. And then with my retailer hat on, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's my problem. So in a world where supply chain is suffering and trying to cope with shortages, war, Brexit, post-pandemic, etc., you've taken on an incredible responsibility here around, if you like, authenticating or at least amplifying people's claims around, fair wages, anti-slavery, use of their profits, etc. How on earth are you coping with that level of supply chain assurance, then visibility, and then the merchandising front end? It seems to me like you're three enormous problems there. I hope it wasn't easy to solve and we've just missed it. Is there, uh, what was the approach there? Because it's quite a mighty undertaking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that indeed the fashion sector is under stress from some of the supply chain challenges that you mentioned. Obviously, sustainability is continues to be a big question, as we just discussed. And I think that what's great about Zalando as a platform, we do have, I would say, a bit more agility in these challenging times, especially as you mentioned, these supply chain constraints that we have. What has been helpful is obviously being able to be obviously a retailer, so we do buy and sell products from brands, but then also as a platform, the brands can also really step in and adapt their assortment to what customers are looking for. And I think this is where we will be more agile potentially than other retailers might be. What we see is, for example, brands are able to respond pretty quickly to, do we see changes in customer behavior around price points, around buying differently in terms of seasonality based on, the consumer confidence that we see. And they can then respond by tailoring their offer and saying, okay, maybe we will offer slightly lower price points, or we will offer the back to school assortment earlier because people are thinking about that at a different time. And this is where I think we've already seen the strength of the platform. If I look at our Q1 results, we are now over 30% of our business comes from partners, and in some of markets like in the Benelux, this is even higher than that. And so I think this agility that we have will help us to be able to react potentially in a better way to some of these challenges. But of course, that said,
That's a good point.
we are not either, sheltered from them completely. I don't think anyone is.
Just extending that thing about customer behavior, you said that nice story about how you showed products that were more sustainable, and therefore the sales went up as a result. Are you finding the position you're taking as a business is filtering out to the partners and businesses that you work with to create your overall offering? Are they following your lead? Do you see them more as a result of what you're doing as the standard bearer?
Absolutely. I think when we share obviously this data with our partners, both, we also put it in the earnings releases, so this is open to the public. But the more that they see that, yes, if you put the assortment here and you clearly, flag the benefits of this assortment, that customers will gravitate towards this. It also inspires them to create more sustainable assortments and to bring those to life and to make sure that those benefits are able to be clearly explained to the customers. I think one thing is really important is to work with them to understand what do you want to say about these products? How do you want them to be brought to life? And that's how we work with them in terms of bringing them onto the platform. But then we also work with Zalando Marketing Services to be able to tell those stories. And we have some sustainable brands that we work with that then really work with our marketing services to be able to tell both on site and on app what is the story of their brand, why should customers be interested in their sustainability story. I can probably think of a couple of examples I can share, but I would need to check. Yeah, indeed, I think this is how we can continue to expand it and create this sort of, I guess, virtuous circle of more sustainable products, more customers looking for sustainable products.
Mm. So right now, our listener will be thinking, that's enough of Ian and Jamie. Let me fire up LinkedIn and check out Megan's CV because I want a job and I want to know how I get a job like that. So, should we just save them the effort, Megan? Just tell us a little bit about how you got to Zalando because, um, you've had a brand background most recently. So give us the sketch of how you got where you are, and then tell us, what the big difference is between being brand side and being retailer platform, pan-European, multi-company, multi-country.
Yeah, definitely. Sure. Yes, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not born in the UK. I'm actually from the US originally. I grew up in the Midwest in Wisconsin. And, my journey in this area in retail and beauty and fashion started very, very early. I was working in retail, when I was a student, working in stores, and I developed, I would say, a passion for retail. Specifically, I was working in sporting goods, so it's also sport was a big part of my background. But that was sort of one of the red threads. And when I moved to Europe, I think it was about almost 20 years ago. I was working at first in the pharmaceutical industry, and then I worked in beauty. One of my first jobs in France was working for a very sustainable beauty company. And it was always sort of the red thread was, I think, customer centricity. So it was always about how can I know my customer and serve them. And so whether that was working in retail stores, working in pharmaceutical industry, beauty industry, and then eventually started working for Nike. I worked for Nike for 16 years. I started in France. I was working, I think, in France for almost 6 years for Nike, and then moved to the UK, moved to the Netherlands, and that 16-year trajectory that was across multiple, I would say, commercial functions in the beginning, so sales, retail, merchandising, and then eventually moving into general management, where I spent the last 5 years. It was really, yes, understanding customers, serving them better, creating an emotional bond, creating trust with them, and then creating, I would say, value propositions with whatever product it was that I was then at that point, working on, to really be
Mm.
able to develop that, and bringing that across different markets has been something I'm really passionate about, and I love the challenge of a new market, learning about the customer, learning how to serve them, and kind of connecting those dots, and that's really what I've been doing. So, the last 2 decades was really about brands. I really enjoyed that journey, and I think after 20 years or so working always for brands, I felt like it was time to do something different. And I was always very intrigued by this world of platforms, I would say, and seeing this as sort of a big part of the future. And Zalando at the time and still is a big partner for Nike, and so one that was very respected. And so Zalando really was someone that I looked at as, hey, this is actually, it really is it's a platform, but it's also fashion, it's beauty and
Mm.
sport. It wasn't just multi-platform, sell everything. And so I was very attracted to the brand. And I really wanted to learn and challenge myself, I think, personally and professionally. And coming to Zalando has been exactly that. I would say a very big learning curve, but also something I wanted to do for myself to prepare myself for the next, 20 years of my career.
Yeah. Now, if you were talking to an even younger person and they were asking your advice um, about moving into the world of these new platforms that have a finger in every pie and, in fact, are increasingly making the pies and the
Mm.
pastry and everything as well.
Hmm.
So we'll take for granted they've got a good education, passion, etc., etc. As you look to the next 20 years, is there an attribute that you'd be looking for in your successor or your successor's successor that is going to fit them, intelligent, capable, applied as they are, for this next phase of retail where you've painted a picture of data rich, um, flexible storytelling, high contact platforms? What's the secret sauce you'd be looking for amongst 20 equally brilliant successors?
That's a great question. And as I build my team, I do think about that a lot, because I have a lot of very young people working with me, which I think is a real, I think it's a gift because I learn from them so much. I'm in my 40s, and when I'm working with people that are in their early 20s and, 30s, and it's a very different lived experience so far. What they grew up with smartphones, they grew up with the internet, and I didn't, and these are
Yeah.
these generational differences are probably even more pronounced as we go forward. So I think what's really important and what I would look for in the successor is really no different than probably what the person who hired me, 20 years ago in my first jobs was, which is whatever means you have, whether that's data, whether that's AI, whether that's all the different technologies we will have in the future, is to use that to better understand the customer and to really understand what is it that they need, how can we serve them better, what do they need but they don't know it yet. I think that's always the classic example. It's like the iPod was always the classic example of no one knew that they wanted all of their CDs, in one tiny thing in your pocket until suddenly it existed. And I think
Yeah.
it's knowing what they need now and anticipating what they will need in the future, and try and being passionate and obsessed with that. That is what I think will be today, tomorrow, in the past. It's always been what makes people who work in this industry in retail strong. And there will just be different tools in the future, and nothing really more than that. So that's what I would look for. I think, how do you get
Great
there?
point.
Maybe one thing people always ask me, how did you do this going from Wisconsin to working in Europe and all of these things? And I think it's sort of like the example I used earlier around, the mall or the platform and being in the path of the customer. I think putting yourself in the path of where you want to be. I knew I wanted to be in Europe. I knew I wanted to be in this industry, and sort of provoking your destiny, getting your foot in the door, however it is, doing some courses or getting yourself there. I knew if I could just make it to Europe, I could somehow stay there. I just needed to get there. And I think this is also what I would just encourage young people to do, is if you have an idea of where you want to be and in which area, to put yourself there, put yourself in that path, because that's when you can unlock these opportunities in the future.
And I love the idea of, putting yourself in the path. But I think what's coming out of this is a very clear maker. So you start off knowing things, but learning to know more things with a direction is, I think, a very modern requirement. Uh, well, look, Megan, we've covered so much stuff. You've been very generous with your time. As you are about to hang up and leave the digital studio,
Mm.
what's on your agenda? What's exciting you about the rest of the day and the next phase ahead? You've got plenty on. Where's the excitement?
Yes. Well, what I'm loving right now is being able to connect again, I think, with people in real life. We got to connect in real life, Ian, and hopefully soon we will also, Jamie. Good to meet. I love the virtual studio, but I'm just super energized by being back in sort of the real life groove, and balancing that. I think I'm loving the fact that I can work from home and take my daughter to school, and have a bit of balance, but also I love getting with the team and spending time in real life, and I can just feel that the creativity and the excitement is starting to come, and we're better, I think, now virtually, also because we're sometimes together also physically. And I think finding this balance of how we're going to work, reconnecting with people in real life is really something I'm feeling excited about, and I can see that it's going to be a catalyst, I would say, for some great new ideas, I think, that will come forward in the future. So that's what I'm thinking about at the moment, outside of just the business perspective.
Wonderful. Well, listen, we've talked about connecting a
Mm.
lot. And I think that's maybe if I had to sum up in one word, it is this idea of connection with the brands, with your customer, with colleagues, with markets. Um,
That's the alchemy of it all, isn't it?
that is. Well, we've come to a natural pause. Megan, thank you for taking us on such an interesting journey, uh, just showing us behind the scenes some of the thinking and the approach at Zalando. And as ever, it's been a total pleasure chatting. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. I look forward to speaking again soon. That was actually the quote from my first mentor, and he said it in French, but il faut provoquer son destin. But yeah, I think this is something I'm thinking about a lot right now. So when I first moved to France,
Yeah.
this car, the Mégane from Renault, was just coming out. And so, I mean, I just couldn't avoid it. Every time I called someone, they would be like, Mégane,
There's that
like the
awful advert
car,
with
you know.
Nicole, Papa, Nicole,
Papa.
Papa.
They're still doing it.
No.
Kind of. Yeah, there's a little bit of it in there. Anyway, never mind.